Welcome to What Shall We Say to These Things?
I'm MJ.
I'm TJ, and this is your low-key kiddo Bible study.
And this episode is going to be a side conversation to our Esther study. TJ and I we were preparing for the Esther introduction last night, and it had me thinking about censoring the Bible and how we see things like media like VeggieTales and lots of the Bible stories having to censor the Bible. And to me, it's such an interesting concept to me.
But I don't think it's necessary that they necessarily feel like they need to censor the Bible. I think it's about it being child-friendly, and not just necessarily child-friendly, but so that parents are okay with their children consuming the content.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's interesting to me. I find like a lot of the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, I find it graphic. I find there are stories, especially in the Old Testament, that are not child friendly. They're graphic. They could be, if given no context, you brought some of these stories as a script to a Hollywood screen and they became movies, we would not want our children to watch them.
You said some of them are not child friendly. I think some of them are not adult friendly either.
It's so it's just this interesting concept to me that we personally, I'm very, I guess, anxious about my entertainment and what I find entertainment in, especially when it comes to violence. And as I've gotten older, it's become more difficult for me to stomach it in my entertainment. And so it's so interesting to me that I will not be comfortable watching somebody even kill the bad guy on TV. As in, we see them kill the person, whatever
method.
Mm. That makes me uncomfortable. But then I have to go and listen to read David talk about, the downfall of his enemies and how violent their deaths will be. And then you look at all the wars and you read about what they did to pregnant women, and I'm like, this is the Bible. You understand what I'm saying? It's something that we
hold in high esteem and laud as a holy book.
Right. And then there's just so much violence. There's so much.
You highlighting the violence, but there's so much scandal.
Well, yes. We could stay on David, and we could get
everything.
We could get everything. And so that's such an interesting concept to me, that we shielding our children from specific types of entertainment, and then we want them to read the Bible, and I don't want that to be that statement I just made to be misunderstood, as in our children shouldn't read the Bible because it has the reality, the human reality within it, the violence, the murder, the scandal, but I just think it's interesting that we're so careful with everything else. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
But I think what happens is that let me backtrack. I think you talking about it from your personal experience, because you're talking about parents being so careful about what entertainment their children consume, and that's not every parent.
Okay.
Right? There are some parents who have no idea what their children are watching, right? And I think your view may be heavily influenced by our experience growing up with our parents.
Okay.
Right?
That makes sense.
Which I think was very ironic, because there was so much that we could not watch, but we could watch James Bond with our mother. Right? But that's a whole other story. But I think for the parents who are so cautious about what their children consume in terms of entertainment, I think they tend to generally be equally as cautious in terms of how they introduce Bible stories to their children.
Okay.
And I think that was our experience as well, because we had all these Bible stories that were all, I don't want to say necessarily watered down, but they nicely omitted certain scenes. And like we said in Esther, we got the impression that the young ladies just walked in front of the king and he was just like, oh, this one is nice looking, I will take this one. And it's only as we were older and we actually considered the extent of the story, we were like, oh, that's not actually what happened. And so I think we watch things like VeggieTales, where where King David stole the guy's rubber duck for his bathtub, right? So we got the lesson without knowing or being aware of the reality of the story.
Okay.
And so I think we came away with the lesson that, this was a very selfish move on David's part, because he had a closet full of rubber duckies, and he saw the guy with one little rubber ducky, and he decided he wanted the guy's rubber ducky, and he sent the guy to a pie war to get rid of him because he had stolen his duck. And I think while the real gore and horror and like evilness and wickedness behind what David actually did may have been glossed over, I think we understood the main points. That he had more than enough, and he saw somebody else with one, and he decided, I want his one too. And as children, we could be like, how did he?
That's so unfair.
Yeah. And so I think I tip my hat off to the people, writers. To the like, I love the VeggieTales writers. Like, I think they're geniuses, they're brilliant. I'm not as much of a fan of their more recent work, but the old stuff, like, y'all are my heroes, props, And I think the people who write the children-friendly Bible stories, I think the amount of time it takes, I think you used the word censoring, but I think it has to go further than that, because they also have to find a diplomatic, for lack of a better word, way to bring the message and the lesson across.
Okay.
And so, like, my general point is that for the parents who are genuinely, like, actively censoring their children's entertainment, those are the same parents who are going to go out of their way to find a child-friendly, age-appropriate, I think that's another key factor, age-appropriate telling of the Bible stories, so that the children are introduced to the Bible, are getting into the habit of reading the Bible for themselves. And I think age-appropriate is important. Yeah. I will be in my 20s and still watching VeggieTales. It doesn't matter. But I think an 8-year-old, they need to have, yes, they need to get into the habit of reading their Bible, but I think it needs to be age-appropriate and equally kosher, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I was watching a video some time ago about this young lady. I think she's a youth group leader, and she was basically testing they started off their study they were going to study Esther, but they started off by basically testing their knowledge and on the Bible, and they were just doing so badly and they couldn't understand why. And then they processed that a lot of the Bible had essentially been left out of their education because it was not age appropriate. Yeah. And so they were reading Esther for the first time and seeing the story for the first time, and they were mind blown. Yeah. So I think that is a lot of our experience. A lot of ours is that, yeah. A lot of our experience as those of us who've grown up
with the censored Bible.
But there was something else you mentioned last night that like stuck with me. There's still something I need to sit on for a while. But you were like, there's a difference between what we find entertainment in and what is a historical and I guess religious documentation
Okay.
and compilation. Yeah, it's different for me to read the historical account of such and such war
Mm-hmm.
and to find entertainment in people like slashing each other, and so there is a line that I think it's an interesting line,
Okay.
but there I think there should be a line.
And I think that is what differentiates people watching violent movies and watching war documentaries. Because I personally am not going to watch a violent movie. Like, I can't, my constitution can't handle it. Right? But I think if there's a documentary on a war, for me, even if it's the same war, so the movie is based on this very same war, I would faster go to the documentary. Because, one, I'm guaranteed to get less gore.
Okay.
Right? There's going to be less of the drama and the... Because I feel like Hollywood loves to jazz things up, right? But I also feel like what I'm getting in a documentary, most of the times, because sometimes documentaries not always true, not always honest. But I think sometimes documentaries are propaganda. And I think some people have the same take on Bibles. I think I will be getting a factual retelling of a historical event.
And I can't do either. Well, I find it difficult to do either, the documentary or
The movie.
just my constitution can't handle it. But I guess the part of about the documentary is that you can clearly differentiate that this is something that has happened. It's not something that's happening right
Okay.
live in front of you. So I think being able to make that differentiation can help with the stomaching of it. But yeah, maybe I'm not the best person to have this conversation because I'm already averse to violence and yeah, but it's still something I'm thinking about, and we just thought it would be interesting to share as one of the bonus conversations in studying Esther.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's going to be interesting to come back and maybe have this conversation again after we're done with the Book of Esther.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And maybe consider what are some of the things, like from our VeggieTales version and like all the other child-friendly versions, that like specific things that we skimmed over. Well, not necessarily skimmed over, that we consider to have been censored, that we have discovered after we're done actually going through the entire book. And we're going to leave our comments open, so while you study and you find those little tidbits that you're like, oh, I did not pick this up as a young person or as a child, drop them in the comments, and we'll maybe discuss them and explore them more when we do the retake of this side conversation when we're done with the Book of Esther.
Alright, so hope this was at least mildly interesting.
Or entertaining.
Right, yeah. One or the other.
You see, we can do censored entertainment too.
Alright, so that's it for What Shall We Say to These Things side conversation.